Welcome to Sacred Stream Radio with Isa Gucciardi. Today, Isa discusses karma. This excerpt was taken from a 2010 talk on birth-family dynamics.
What we're talking about tonight is karma. And I think the first thing we need to address here is, what is karma? What are we talking about when we talk about karma? And what is a karmic pattern? And I think when we go to answer that question, we really need to look within the larger context of the Buddhist concept of reincarnation in order to fully understand the breadth and scope of how karma and karmic patterns are generated. Buddhism is really a science for understanding the nature of the self and the nature of reality. And a key principle in Buddhism is that acquisition of this knowledge takes place over lifetimes. So this discussion is couched in a model which sees reincarnation as part of the path to understanding the nature of the self. But even if you don't personally believe in the concept of reincarnation, the perspectives that Buddhism provides, particularly on the nature of birth family dynamics and karma, are very thought-provoking. And also, I think it's really important to define Buddhist concepts of karma from Hindu concepts of karma, because most of us in the West, when we've come in contact with the concept of karma, we're generally coming into contact with the definition of karma that is derived from the populist view of karma from the Hindu culture of India. And in Buddhism, karma is defined as consequences of actions. That's pretty straightforward. And in Hinduism, there's not a disagreement there, but there's a whole overlay in meaning to what consequences of actions are. And there's this overlay of punishment and reward that doesn't really exist in the Buddhist schools of thought and Buddhism of which I'm focusing. And in Hinduism, one's karma is again based on actions on past lives, and if a person is born into favorable circumstances in this lifetime, this is considered to be because one's actions in a past life were good. And if one is born into unfavorable circumstances, this is because one's actions in a past life were bad. This understanding is convenient for enforcing a social caste system where some people live in abject poverty and perform unpleasant duties which support the lifestyle of others who enjoy relative ease. But it's really not that helpful for understanding and deriving true benefit from looking at consequences of actions, because there's this concept of punishment and reward. If we bring the understanding of karma into an intrapersonal sphere where one is trying to understand one's circumstances, it's important to look at karma as not having any concept of punishment or reward connected with the consequences following from specific actions. Consequences may occur as a result of certain actions, but the consequences become sources of information about how a particular action may or may not have been in alignment with one's Buddha nature. And this concept of Buddha nature is really important to understand, because when we're talking about looking at relationships and what they're teaching us about ourselves, what we're really trying to understand is how we have sort of twisted away from our Buddha nature. And in Buddhism, the concept of Buddha nature is defined as an aspect of the self which is always connected to a universal source of life energy. And the aspect of the universal source that can be experienced at the individuated or individualized level is called Buddha nature. And there's some important characteristics about Buddha nature in that it is inherent in all of us. It is a stillness behind the patterns of relating that we are looking at when we're looking at karmic patterns. And it has a consistency to it that is behind the changing circumstances of the way that our personality relates to the world. And the important thing to remember about Buddha nature when we're talking about relationship difficulties or just relationship issues in general, it doesn't have to be a difficulty, but most of our relationship difficulties actually point to the ways in which we have twisted away from our Buddha nature. And so the patterns of behavior and the ways in which we have cycled energy away from sourcing power and love from this central essence are what are called karmic patterns. And generally speaking, the circumstances which cause us to suffer are consequences of certain actions or thoughts. If these consequences are causing us to suffer, it is probably because we have acted in a way which brings us away from the harmony of our core nature or our Buddha nature. And if we examine the patterns which generate the suffering, we can perceive different types of energy moving through them. This is because the way we cycle energy through our emotions and our thoughts and our actions creates particular patterns. And patterns that share similar or complementary methods of cycling energy have more consonance with each other than ones that don't. And this similarity in the way that we're cycling energy, or this complementary nature in the way that we're cycling energy, is part of the basis of how we attract members of our birth family to us. And in order to really talk about this attraction, I want to introduce another Buddhist concept that is drawn from the mind-only school of Buddhism, because it's within this concept that we understand that we are actually generating our realities, that our realities are not happening to us. This is the primary concept within this school of Buddhist thought that helps us begin to take responsibility for our experience, and therefore allows us much more control and possibility in transforming our experience. And so this school of thought again states that everything we are experiencing in our material reality at the personality level of experience that most of us are tapped into on a regular basis is a function of our mind. And by understanding that we are projecting the contents of our mind into material reality in order to better understand ourselves and our relationship to reality, the meaning we derive from our relationship changes, or from all of our relationships changes. And so in the context of this talk, that which we are projecting from our minds is the choice of a birth family. And again, remember, we're talking about this evolution of the knowledge of the self taking place across lifetimes. And so in Buddhism, the more conscious one strives to be regarding the nature of oneself from one lifetime to another, the more choice one has from one lifetime to another in terms of the type of birth-family dynamic we would find ourselves in. And therefore, the less automatic the projection of our experience from the level of our mind becomes.
Thanks for listening to Sacred Stream Radio, brought to you by Red Cow Records and the Foundation of the Sacred Stream. For more information, please visit us on the web at sacredstream.org.